Welcome to our study in the book of Habakkuk. We have entitled this study Unavoidable. We have already looked at the introduction, and then I shared with the class and with you. Our second video was a little bit about the Babylonians themselves. Today, as we've already started the first chapter and gone 4 verses, we are now faced in the verses coming up about the Babylonian military. And so that's what this is about today. And I'd like to share you some things today with you about the Babylonian military. What we will be reading is very hard. And while if we read the book of Daniel and what I shared concerning the culture of Babylon, it can sound at times very, I'll use the word normal, like unoffensive, like, okay, these folks they didn't believe in the Lord, but then they took prisoners, but so what? Well, there's a lot of so what, because they destroyed the Jewish empire. They put the finishing touches on it. So let's see how they tackled their enemies and see what goes on with them in the next few minutes. So stay with me, please. If we wanted to learn about the Babylonian army and warfare, we need to know that there were 3 empires from the Mesopotamian area that were involved. All right, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. We're very familiar with the Assyrians and the Babylonians. It was the Assyrians that took the northern kingdom in 3 different battle fronts and 3 different times. And then it was the Babylonians who were like a surrogate nation under the Assyrians. They were very obedient, but the Assyrians allowed them to continue to build their city and run their lives. But the Babylonians rebelled when they got some Medes to help them out, and of course the Chaldeans, and they defeated the Assyrians. So each one of these learned from the other one. The Akkadians started out when things were basically bows and arrows, spears and slingshots, and pick up a rock and throw it. And then it just depended on who had the endurance and maybe who had the most, as they would charge each other's. The Assyrians really put a lot of thought into warfare because they conquered an awful lot of ground. And so with each battle, they learned something new, and that would, of course, be passed on to the Babylonians, which they developed it a little bit further. But probably the people most deserving of credit would be the Assyrians. Babylon was the recipient of what the Akkadians and the Assyrians developed, and I've shared that with you. So putting the army together. Well, the very first thing is chariots, and I'm going to be trying to show you actual pictures of archaeological digs around Babylon, around different places that are from that area. So here you can see something that doesn't look like a Roman chariot, let's put it that way. And they often would have 2 horses or 3 or 4 horses pulling their chariots, depending on how many horses they had, and secondly, how enduring in battle it would have to be and how important it was to move those chariots quickly. Here is an etching off of a mural, an art mural in Babylon. And that's very, very telling and revealing of a chariot. See, there's something to shade from the sun up above. And it looks like there's 3 on this. One would be the driver, and the other ultimately would take the role of the archer or the one who's going to throw a spear. And then again, this has definitely been etched by the Babylonians into the wall. And a lot of it's based on that picture I just showed you, this black and white. That really is the picture, but then there's writing. Ancient Mesopotamian chariot warfare emerging around 2000 BC marked a transformative shift in military tactics. It was something truly innovative in the world. Chariots, two-wheeled horse-drawn vehicles, became iconic symbols of Mesopotamian power and innovation on the battlefield. Typically crewed by a skilled driver and an archer or spearman, chariots provided speed, agility, and medium-range striking capabilities. The Mesopotamians harnessed the prowess of the use of the chariots to devastating effect. This seemingly simple asset became one of the most feared sights on an ancient battlefield. So if you'd never seen this and here they came, wow, it'd scare you. We understand that. So how about the siege of the art? The siege is the art of warfare. And here is a wall and fighting going on. There's the bows and arrows, but then lo and behold comes a great battle instrument. I've taken the type away so we can just look at this. This was etched in stone. This is a Babylonian wall. Siege towers, towering structures with mobile platforms, allowed troops to approach and scale defensive walls, while battering rams were employed to break through wooden gates. So the siege towers is what we want to look at first. And we just read something on that. And here is a good diagram of this. Notice they were on some type of wheels, generally wooden, not rubber. There was the weight for the balance that, do you see number 12 on the back, the line, and then it looks like a bucket. Really, that's a lot of rocks. It's a rock. And what that would do is and you can see if you go up and then come back down into the siege thing by the last ladder to the left, you see the turnstile that men would crank this. And as they would release the bucket, I'll just use the word bucket, or the stone up high, it would pull the drawbridge back up. But if you wanted to let the drawbridge down in the hook that was involved, you would turn it the other way. Then, of course, down below, you would have people working. There's the battering ram on the lower part of the wall, getting it to collapse, or perhaps to poke a hole through. Then all behind the frontage of this, and let me go to the next slide, we can go back and forth, all the sides were encased so that was protection for all the men inside and really the army. And I'm going to go back up. The ladders were on the inside. And that was all full of soldiers getting ready to go up to the top and then come running out. And they could run probably 50 soldiers out of there at a shot. But they could constantly reload from behind. So there could be a whole stream of soldiers back there. So those are some side views of models that were made. I think that's rather ingenious. Sappers were employed to undermine walls or to light fires underneath wooden gates, and ramps were thrown up to allow men to go over the ramparts or to attempt a breach on the upper section of wall where it was the least thick. And a sapper did that dirty work, they did like demolition. They'd dig down underneath the wall a little bit or to where they could, and they'd try to store the gate, and they'd set fires. They would work at cracks in the wall, pulling fresca, which say cement today, but the mortars put it out, and stick wood in there and set a fire to try to crack anything they could. And by the way, our military, United States military, they still use the term and have sappers. And these are the demolition men and women. Think about what the demolition people do. They blow up bridges and break down walls. So it's very alike, only the warfare is much better. So this is a little bit better. Gives you an idea of some of the things, how things were going. This is a smaller one, a different kind of version. And in this painting, you can see the towers approaching and already at the wall. And then over to the far right is a city gate. There would be some sappers there, as well as in those other areas. Mobile ladders allow attackers to cross moats and quickly assault any point and their defenses. So there's the ladders, just put them up the wall. That's very common in many offensive assaults on cities of eras gone by. But they used them as recently with our Alamo, the Mexicans did, to take the Alamo. Archers. These operations were covered by masses of archers who were the core of the infantry. And they seem to always have a place on Babylonian reliefs into walls and places of honor and halls of the culture of being etched into things. And while we show you little samples and setups, I'm going to show you more later on, this is only, there's 8 to one of these models. And they just put them together, but they did not have just 8 archers. The archers would be at the very forefront to begin with. And they would just load their arrows. If they thought there was any danger, they'd get behind the big equipment, but they couldn't shoot over it and be effective. So they did have to be slightly in front, if not as close as they could get. But understand there were archers in the city too, up on the walls, that would have a longer range. So a lot of this has to do with just the archers coming out and shooting and getting as many people as they can. And if there's a flurry of arrows always coming in, you can move your larger equipment in without a whole lot of resistance. All right, the army itself, we're jumping ahead, or jumping back actually, 3000 BC. The army's main weapons were slings, spears, and maces. This is the Babylonian army. And here's some actual spears dug up at Babylon. In 2500 BC, bronze metallurgy revolutionized warfare, leading to the development of more advanced weapons and armor. And so bronze weapons started to include swords, axes, and daggers, and also the defensive ones to protect the soldiers, helmets, shields, body armor, and would ward off, for instance, arrows. Wouldn't necessarily be of any value if your army was almost protected totally with armor and helmets. So these are some of the weapons that have been refined and drawn so that we could see them more so. We see definitely an axe, and we see daggers, heads of spears. Here's an array of Babylonian warfare equipment, definitely the shields. And you can see weights and balances, I see, and actual pots that would be attached to vehicles. There's the swords, bows and arrows. Even a slingshot is shown there. And as we're into the Bronze Age, there's some actual ones that were dug up. Look how they drew an ear on them. Isn't that interesting? In the middle bottom, the helmet is an earlier Babylonian army helmet. And so in the 1200s BC, craftsmen refined their metallurgical techniques, incorporating iron into the weaponry, and the armor got a lot heavier, though. So the cavalry, what do we know about them? Horses make a big difference in battle, especially if you can shoot arrows from them accurately. So here's a few little, so the fact that we have only pictures and not a lot, you just don't dig up a cavalry in archaeological ruins. So you have to put these together based upon history and other writings and the items found, the relics that are found. This is how the men would be dressed and ready for battle. We're talking about the cavalry. Here is a layout, one layout. There are different ones, but this is a Babylonian battlefront. Now, what again has happened, please understand, numbers have been reduced. This is proportionate to what they'd bring. So, for instance, if you're looking at 4 archers, then the chariots might be 4 also. But if you're looking at 800 archers, and that's often what it was, you would have the numbers, the foot soldiers would be different proportionately, etc. And as you look across this, there's some things very interesting. You have the horse archers off to your right. There's your cavalry, but keep in mind there's your horses also right behind the chariots. So you have horses, and then you have horses pulling chariots. That's very quick and very fleet warfare. Then, from time to time, they would have Arab camel riders in the back. And then there's other cavalry, and the guard cavalry over on the left side. But there are not huge amounts of chariots there. These would be riders. So think of the riders coming from both directions or both sides at once, and just making a pass or chasing an army straight on. It'd be quite effective. The supply chain. How in the world do they get their food? Supply chains were critical elements of military success. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers served as vital conduits for the movement of troops and supplies, facilitating strategic deployments and reinforcing key positions. So a comment I want to get you to the map right now. Keep in mind that here is Babylon, and this is the whole Babylonian Empire. But where Babylonia is written up above is real close where to Nineveh was, and the capital of the Syrian Empire. So you have 2 empires here, major empires. The Assyrian and the Akkadians were the same way. They were up there on the river. And the Babylonians down, with the Assyrians in the middle with Nineveh. And so they could go up and down these 2 rivers, but mainly the Euphrates one. If Babylon, when they went up to defeat Nineveh, they of course had their army soldiers up there, but they would have secured the river all the way back to Babylon, the city. And so they could move things up and down the river. Armies maintained extensive granaries, strategically positioned to stockpile grain and other provisions, ensuring sustained campaigns. All right, let's go talk about the river again. So all along the river, they could build storage barns and leave some soldiers there to guard them. And as long as those were kept full, and the supplies were guarded and kept around those granary bins and storage units, they could just put things right into the river, or they could haul them up there alongside the river. So that's the logistics of that. Armies maintained extensive granaries strategically, and I've already mentioned this to you, sorry. And let's go on. River transport not only expedited the movement of troops, but also facilitated the delivery of essential goods to the front lines. And so as we come to a close here, I just wanted to show a picture here of this Babylonian army, and this is a artist concept. It's not the real city of Babylon, but what they thought it looked like, and it would. And of course, there's the Euphrates River with a bridge across it, and they're on the other side. And as we're about to go into Habakkuk and start in chapter 1 and verse 5, it's going to be about the Babylonian armies coming and what they're going to do. And then we're going to see it again in chapter 2. It's going to be hard to read that, but it gives us an understanding of how they came, because they did come. And God told them that this was unavoidable now. And hence the topic, or the title for our study in the book of Habakkuk. And you know, when God makes a promise, it comes true. And even the bad ones. Israel had lots of opportunity to turn to the Lord and just continued to just throw away those opportunities. And God just put a line down and said, you've crossed this. There's no going back. Judgment's coming. You know, where we are today, we sit in a very, very prophetic position in the world. We are seeing prophecy fulfilled, but we also, and we get excited over that. I am. Our prayer is the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. We definitely are praying for the rapture and anticipating that and believing it will come in our lifetime. That's our hope. We believe that, and it will happen. I may die and go to heaven, and my kids and grandkids, but it is going to happen. And that's a promise of God, but we understand there's another side of the coin. There is great judgment coming that is already unavoidable. And that's that is the 7-year tribulation. That's the judgment of nations. That's the great white throne judgment to judge the lost. And after that judgment, they are cast into hell because they did not believe and receive Jesus Christ as the Son of God. So the armies coming towards Israel, the angel armies, going to show up someday. So we're going to leave it at this for you today. These are some of my helps. I have more, but these help me along with this, and I don't mind telling you. Go ahead and the ancientorigins.net site was very, very helpful with all of this. I found other pictures and added a few things, but their study was greatly of help to us and to our Bible class. So thank you, and God bless you, and hang in there. If I can be of any help to you, here's where to email me. Also, I want to encourage you to check my playlist if you missed any of the first lessons. I continued as I teach them to put them up. Plus, I have lots of other Bible studies that may be a blessing and help to you, as well as Americana things that are fun, sort of. So that's just a few things to whet your appetite. And I'll see you for our next lesson in Habakkuk. God bless you.